proofs, some convincing evidence that Jesus did conquer death. I think most of you, I wouldn't even have to convince that much. Maybe some of you, and if you'd like to talk more about some pretty powerful historical evidence that Jesus did come back from the dead, we can talk about it. But what I've learned, and this is maybe more troubling, is that it isn't so much that people don't believe that it's true anymore. It's just they just don't care as much anymore. Kind of an indifference. Like, that's nice, but how does it change my life right now? And I think I can resonate a little bit with some of this, because have you had someone resurrect from the dead that's close to you? Have you had someone pass away? Have you gone through loss and then that person came back to life? Probably not. And so that would be a life-changing thing, but we're not always seeing that. And then when you think about resurrection, like, what does that mean for you personally? Like, how have you been attached to that? And so I know for me, I believe that it's true, and we're really going to get into why that's such good news. But to me, it's because not just that resurrection happened, but that it happened to the person it happened to. Jesus called it out, which also is incredible, that he said, this is how my story is going to go. This is when I'm going to die, and this is when I'm going to come back. And anytime someone can predict their own death and come back, whatever he's got to say, I'm going to believe it. And so Jesus said this was going to happen, and he did it, and he came back. And this is good news. But what I want to zero in on today is this was Jesus. This wasn't somebody else. Like, of all the people to come back to life, to prove that they were who they say they were, to put a period at the end of an incredible story. This is the resurrection. To me, one of the things it is it's a confirmation that all the stories you know about Jesus is true, and it means a lot for you today. It is the best story because it's Jesus. And I want to tell you a story about why I believe Jesus coming back is the best person to do it. Why the story of Jesus and what he is and what he's done for you, him beating death, resurrecting from the grave, emptying himself out for our behalf, is the best thing you're ever going to know. And it only gets better the more you learn about it, because you have a relationship with God. Some of you developed a relationship with God. You know him well. Some of you, rarely do you even think about a relationship with the eternal creator of the world and everybody in between. And so I just want to talk to you about that relationship and why Jesus is the best one to do what he did, and why that's so important for us all these years later. It's my favorite story, actually. And I can't prove this, but I think this is Jesus' favorite story too. This is out of the Gospel of Luke. This is Luke chapter 15. Some of the text is going to be on the screen behind me, but I just want to tell you this story because I think if you let it, God's got something to say to you through this text. It starts very different, and Jesus is a master storyteller. And so he has an audience of people. That there are religious leaders and Pharisees, those that know the Old Testament as he would and are ready to call him out as soon as he starts talking. And then there are tax collectors and sinners, those that are there listening to him, trying to figure out what this prophet is all about. And so he knows his audience, and he tells this story about a father and two sons, and a story I can connect to on more ways than one. And as I get older, more of this sinks in some incredible ways. So maybe you've heard this before, but if you're like me, just because you've heard it doesn't mean you know everything that God's going to say to you in this, because, man, he's got a lot to say. But it goes like this. This father with his two sons, the youngest son, goes up to his father and says, "Father, give me my share of the inheritance." Which, if you know the context, is kind of outlandish for him to even do that, because the context would be a father having his sons, having what he has as property. When he dies, then his inheritance would be divided up among his kids. Specifically, though, if you have a firstborn, that would get double portions. So most of the property would go to the older son, and then a portion would go to the younger. So if there's two sons, 2/3 goes to the older son, and 1/3 to the youngest. But this all happened when the father passes away. So for this younger brother to come up to his dad and say, "Give me my share of the inheritance," is like saying to his dad, "Hey, I wish you were dead because I just want the things you're going to give me," which is extremely disrespectful. Like, if my kids approach me that way, I wouldn't have the kindest attitude if they just wanted my stuff and not me. But even more outlandish is what the father says. He divides his property. He gives his youngest son what he asked for. At literal great expense to himself, he grants this outlandish request. from this prodigal son. And so he takes his percentage from the father, and he, as it says, he goes out and he squanders his wealth with wild living, and he finds himself in a place where it is all just gone, quicker probably than he thought. He was trying to do it his own way, thinking that he would know how to do life better than the way his father was trying to prepare for him. And so he had a plan. He thought he could figure it out himself. And he goes, and it goes quicker than he thought, and life is more difficult than he had in mind. And he gets to this place, this really dark place where he sees pigs eating. And if you know the context, they're already like an unclean animal. And even today, they're pretty nasty when they eat as it is. And so he's wishing he could fill his stomach with the food that they're eating. He's in such a hungry, empty place. And sometimes it's in that place that you come to your senses and that you realize, what I was doing, it's not working. And the way I learned it was that sometimes you don't know that Jesus is all you need until Jesus is all you've got. And this is what happens to people. This is what happened to me. This is what happens to people when they go their own way and they try and do what they want to do, is you'll realize nothing else is going to satisfy like God does. And so he's understanding. He comes to his senses, this younger son, the younger brother, and he comes up with a plan. I can't stay like this. What I thought was going to work, the way I wanted to find truth and find home, it just wasn't going to happen. And so I'm going to make a plan. And I'm gonna, you know what? I'll be like one of his hired hands. I'll go be a servant. I'll be a slave to my father, and then maybe I can pay him back for what I lost, and at least I'll have food in my stomach, and it'll be better for me. So this, hopefully this will work. And he comes up with this plan, and so he's on his way back home, hoping for his father to have grace. And again, if this was you, and you had one of your kids say to your face that they wish you were dead, what kind of reaction do you think you might have when they come home to you? Hesitant? We'll see where this goes. Maybe angry. How dare you show up here? But this father is different, because his father sees his son from a long way off, it says, and has compassion on him. And that he sees him and he runs to his son, throws his arms around and gives a big hug and a kiss. In the Greek, that he fell on his neck, put a ring on his finger, and as the son is trying to tell the father, like, I've sinned against heaven, against earth, I've messed up, make me like one of, he cuts him off, like, no, I don't even want to hear your plan. And he puts this ring on his finger, like, you were lost, but you're home. You're my son again. Like, you're fully reinstated in the family. Everything I have is yours again. Puts a robe, like, you're my son. You're not somebody else's, you're mine. Brings him back home. The compassion this father has for his kid. And again, the context, the details, the little nuance in this text is amazing, because there's a couple things about this that just blow me away. Is this father running to his kid, there's a couple things in here that you can learn from that. In this shame and honor society, for a son to disrespect his father like that, it would not be out of the ordinary for other people to know this story, to know about this wayward son and want to protect this father of honor. And so when that son comes down the street, he would have been stoned or pushed away or even assaulted to leave the city. So the father running to his son was maybe a form of protecting him from his neighbors. This is a loving embrace, like, hey, I know he probably deserves something different than what I'm giving him, but he's mine, and I'll decide what he's going to get. And he gives him a huge hug, and then I'm overwhelmed by the fact that the father runs, which maybe isn't always a big deal to all of us, but in this, again, shame and honor society, kids will run like kids just ran out of this, like they have no issue with running, always have been, always will be. But as men of honor, they had their big robes, and they were prestigious, and so they would have to like hike up their skirt, and to run would have been really awkward and frankly embarrassing and humbling. And this father is willing to do that for his kids. Says a lot about his kind of love. Protective, compassionate, not what you would expect. Fully reinstates his son. This is one of my favorite pictures of a relationship we get to have with God. Is that whatever you've done, no matter how far you've run away, no matter what you've gone through, This father is different, and he wants a relationship with you. The story goes on to say that he kills a fattened calf. The lost has been found. The son of mine that's gone is back, and we're going to celebrate this. This is probably the best day of the father's life. Like, his kids are home. This is what he wanted more than anything, is that when his kids are home with him, this is what fills him up. And as a dad, I get it already, like when they come home, y'all, that they don't have to just be in there with me. Like, I'm learning, man, there's other things in life, but when my kids are with me, there's something to that just fills the tank of the father. And his kids are home and the dad's happy. And the son is given what he doesn't deserve, and it's a beautiful picture of God's love for his kids. And again, wherever you're at, I hope you know you have that kind of father that loves you with compassion beyond what you can comprehend, from a long way off, because he was sitting there waiting for this moment. He wasn't busy in the kitchen or in the yard doing something. He had his eyes on the horizon, hoping, waiting for this day. Like, I hope it's today that he comes back. And then he goes to him. He is waiting for his kids to come home. His love for you is incredible. The original audience, though, I don't know that they were moved to tears. I don't know that they saw the loving father. I think the sinners did. I think the tax collectors saw that this is not how we usually hear that God would act. Because the other group of people in the audience, the religious leaders, the tax collectors, they usually see something different. And the story's not over. As you might know, there are two sons. And so in this story, the youngest son comes back, and they throw a huge party, and it's the best day of the father's life, and they kill the cat and calf, which that's a big deal. So that would have been a larger animal that in theory would feed the whole family, all the guests. I mean, the city could have been invited to this. Like, this was a big deal. And the father, like, sparing no expense, man, everyone's going to see this because this is my heart. This is what I want. And so the older brother is out working in the field. And he hears about this. He sees that there's commotion in the house and something's going on. And so he asks one of the servants, like, what's happening? And they tell him, your brother has come home. And your father killed the fattened calf. We're going to celebrate. And this older brother doesn't react with joy or happiness about what has happened. He's bitter. He's angry about this. He's seeing the situation for what he thinks it really is. And so he doesn't want to go inside. He doesn't want to deal with this because this is a difficult dilemma that now he's in the middle of. Because again, he's the older brother. It's his inheritance. It's his estate. And so he's trying to honor the father. He's trying to do what the father wants. And this brother of his comes back, and this messes things up. And so he chooses, you know what, I'm not going to go into this. Like, this is not okay. And the father, filled with compassion for his kids, the best day of his life, his son comes home, and so he doesn't see his other son that he loves dearly, and so he goes out to plead with him and come into the party. Like, this is a good thing. And the older brother, there's a compare and contrast with these two boys, and you're going to see some of this. He looks at his father, he says, look, I've been slaving for you. I've been doing this work for you. And then he says, this son of yours. He doesn't even say, my brother. He doesn't even say father. He just says, look. Like I'm going to tell you, Dad. Like, this is how things have been. Look, this has been happening. I've been slaving for you, which says a lot about what he thinks about his relationship with his father. I've done all these things, and then I wanted to celebrate with my friends and even kill a goat, like something smaller, and it wouldn't be as expensive, but you wouldn't let me. But this son of yours comes home, and you're willing to do this? This is unacceptable. He's angry. He's upset that the father would do that. It doesn't add up in his mind that that's how the dad would want to do things, because he's counting the cost. He's thinking about what this is going to cost the family, which ultimately this is what it's going to cost him. It's going to be his eventually, and so this doesn't seem fair. It's not right. The father pleads with him, son, come inside. The lost have been found. Like, this is good news. This is the celebration. This is the party that I want all my kids to be a part of. And the story ends just right there. And so that audience, man, they heard that a little different. Because if you notice, there's some interesting comparison and similarities here about these two brothers. Both of them very disrespectful to their father about what they have to say. And the father reacts with incredible kindness and compassion for his boys. And one of them is wayward. It leaves the father and goes off to do it his own way and then comes back. And the other one is at home with his dad, slaving away for him and getting upset in the way the father's doing things. And he's left outside. Like, the story ends where the son that squanders his wealth in wild living is the one that gets to come home. But the one that's been doing the work of the father is left outside. The Pharisees, they were not happy to hear this story. Like, Jesus, what are you trying to say right now? And I think Jesus, to that audience, again, master storyteller. He wanted them to see, listen, you can be far away from me just as much in your immorality as you can in your morality. Like, don't miss up how I do things. Like, you can disobey, you can run away from me by breaking all the rules just as much as you can by following all the rules. That I'm looking at something different because both sons, the youngest, he wanted what he wanted from the father. He wanted the inheritance, and he got what he got, and he left. He didn't care about the father. He cared about the father's things, and he left. And the older brother, greatest day of his dad's life, he didn't care about that. He wanted what he wanted. You're messing up the inheritance. This is costing more than it wanted to. He didn't want the father. He wanted the father's things. They both missed the heart of their dad. They didn't see what it was that the father wanted more than anything. And so you can be in your lostness just as well, knowing and being around him and slaving for the father just as much as running away from him. And he wants those two groups, that original audience, to see this like, hey, don't try and earn this. Don't try and make your way back. Don't try and tell me how righteous you are. Like, I don't need to hear any of that. I just want my kids to come home, and I'll lay the terms on how that's going to work. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to say who's worth it and who isn't and who gets to come in, because the cost isn't on you anyway. I'm throwing this party, and I want you all to be there. And this is this father, and it stirs the crowd, and they're overwhelmed by this message. And I can't imagine what it would have been like for them. But this story is not just for them. It wasn't just for that original audience. Jesus, again, is a master storyteller, but even more than that. I believe this is his favorite story because he writes himself in it. And I believe that he knew it was for the religious leaders and for the sinners and the tax collectors, but he knew as well that it would be for you. He knew that this story was for you. Because this is from Timothy Keller. This is not my original thought. Like, he saw this, and this is why I love the stories, because I thought I knew it. I thought I knew the text. Like, I had it memorized. I could tell you verse 15 through, 32, where this thing ends. It's a pretty awesome story. But there's this big thing I missed. One of the things I learned in Bible college is that context is king. If you can put a story in its context, that will help you understand what else is happening. We just kind of did that already this morning. Like, the context of that shame and honor society makes the father's love and the son's disobedient all that more blatant. The context of this is that there are two stories that happen right before this one. In Luke 15, there's the story of the lost coin, where the woman loses her coin in her house and turns over tables to try and find what was lost and gets it and is glad that she has it back. And then the second story is that of a shepherd that has a sheep, and there's the one that leaves, and so he leaves the 99 to find the one to bring that sheep home. And so there's this context that, okay, you have characters that have something that's lost, and then they find it. And they bring it back. This is like the kingdom of God. Jesus is telling us this story. Hey, there's a theme here. Something gets lost. And then it gets found, and it comes back home, and this is good. But then in this last story, there is definitely something that's lost. And the obvious one would be the younger son, but by the end of the story, the older one too. But nobody goes out to get them. Like, the younger son, he leaves, he comes to his senses, and he comes back. The older son was always there. He's just kind of on his way out. Jesus, I think, intentionally wants us to look a little deeper into this story and ask the question, who was supposed to go? If there's a coin that was lost and then it's brought back, someone went to go get it, and there's a shepherd that brings the sheep, who was supposed to go get the son? How was this supposed to go? Again, the context is helpful. The way this normally would go is if you have a father, he takes care of his estate, what he has around him, and he's got 2 sons, which is an asset and a blessing to say the least. And so when the younger son leaves, what was supposed to happen is that the older son, he should have gone out to go get his brother. If he cared anything about what the father wanted, he would have saw that that was important. He would have known, it is my father's heart that his kids are home. If this is what dad wants, okay, like I'm going to go do this because this is what he cares about. And it would cost me a lot. I'll lose more of the inheritance. I might not ever make it back, but if this is what my dad wants, then I'm going to honor my father. But that's not the character we get in the story. The tax collectors, the Pharisees, they're still rivaling and just upset about the fact that they thought they were good enough. And they missed that it wasn't about being good enough. It was about caring about what the Father cares about. And the Father cares about his kids coming home. So Jesus knows this, and he writes himself into the story, and he brings you into the story, and he says, I am the true older brother. Because Jesus didn't just go from his father's house and leave and go to the next town. Like, he left heaven and came to earth on a search for you, and at great personal cost. That he gave up his abilities and his rights, and he was willing to go to the cross. And he was willing to go through everything he went through, all of it, with you in mind. Because of his love for you, because he knows that his father wants nothing more than all of his kids to be home. And that's the father's heart, and so he's, okay, I will go bring them back. And you need to know that Jesus, he's the kind of person that says, okay, if this is what dad wants, then I'll give up whatever was mine, because it was my ring to wear. It was my robe to carry. I was the son, but I'll give that up. I'll give it all up so that you can wear it. You get my ring. You get my robe. You'll be a son. You'll be a daughter. And this is what he wanted. And this is what makes the father's heart filled. And then that party, that will be a celebration of celebrations when all of his kids are home. And this is what dad wants. This is what he cares about. And Jesus knows that. He writes himself in this story, and he comes and he brings you home and he rescues you over and over and over again. He's been on this mission to bring all the kids, bring all back home to dad. This is what he wants. And I'm so thankful that that's the kind of person that Jesus is. And when I think about his story, when I think about that story, to me, and maybe just me, that's what makes the resurrection all that more powerful. Because it could have been somebody else, but Jesus gave up his life for us. But Jesus did what the Father wanted to honor his dad. And so he comes back to life. He defeats death, and he welcomes us into the greatest party that we're ever going to be a part of. And this is good news for all of us. And so the resurrection, Jesus coming back to life, saying that everything I ever did is true. This isn't just some story. This is your reality. You get this invitation to the best party you could ever be a part of. You get an invitation to come home. And Jesus makes that way for you. And it doesn't get much better than that. I don't know a better story than this. And not just a better story, but one that is any more true than this. We have a lot to celebrate today. We have a really, really good story that is true. And the resurrection makes it clear to me. And every time I think about it, man, Jesus didn't just do what he did, but he was that person that left heaven, came here, and brought us home. You have that gift, and he proves it, he declares it, he reinforces it when he beat death and came back to say, this is all true, and I'm bringing you home. And I don't want you to miss this, because it's really, really good news that Jesus, not anybody else, but Jesus came back, because he's that kind of person, and he loves you in an incredible way. And you got to know from me, I want you all to be at this party. This resurrection feast, the fattened calf, the extraordinary, the extravagant lengths that the Father is going to go to for the party when the lost are found and when his kids are home. you don't want to miss this party. And you've all been invited to it. And to me, it's holding on to that ticket like, I have admission to this. Because of what he did, I get to go. And I can't wait. It's going to be the best thing ever. And I want everyone to know that. I want them to come home. And so like Jesus, like the true older brother, it is my heart that we go out and we get them and bring them home. We do what the Father wanted us to do. And not debate on our religious excellence and why we think we're good enough to get what the Father is supposed to give us, because it's not about the Father's things and the things that we get around God. It's about our relationship with Him, and only that, because in that, His heart is there and your joy will be complete. And I want that for every single one of you. I want to close and pray over you, and we're going to have a closing song. And if God spoke to you, I don't want you to let that go. I want you to remember that these stories are not just fables. They're not just well put together information. They're true and they're good. And God has big plans for you, and don't miss that. So would you pray with me? Father, you're my favorite. No questions. I think that I know your stories, and I think that I know your heart. But every time, it's like 10 times better. And there's so many and even now, like, God, I just want to thank you in advance for all of the other stories that I don't know completely yet. All of the other details about you that I don't know yet. Because everything I learn about you just makes you all the more beautiful and all the more a joy to me. And I'm so thankful, God, that I get to have a relationship with you, that I get to be one of your sons, that you would welcome me back home, because I don't deserve it. I don't deserve any of it. I'm a mess, and I run from you in my disobedience as well as my obedience, and I try and earn it through my righteousness, and I try and deny you through my running, but you're good, and you have so much compassion for me in all the ways I miss the mark. And I pray, Father God, you would help me to be the son that you've called me to be. Help me to delight and rejoice in how wonderful you are. And I pray, Father God, that anybody that's in this room that doesn't know what it means to be loved by you and to be welcomed home, that they would let you work in their heart right now. They would talk to somebody after service. They would pray with somebody. They would let you finish the story that you're telling in their heart today. That they wouldn't let that go, that you are who you say you are. And today, of all days, I'm the most thankful because it isn't just make-believe. You conquered death. And so everything you said is true. You came back to life, and it matters. It matters today. It matters for the rest of my life, for the rest of our lives, because you are who you say you are. And we've been included in your party. We get to come home with you. And I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful, Father. We love you very much. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.
In the darkness we were waiting, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt.
risen. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings.
The morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs,